Okay, ionophore results from feeding errors too much or to the wrong species. It's a hard poison. That's why these horses died, dropped dead under the jockeys. And that's why the chicken litter caused congestive cardiac failure in cattle because of the Madura mycin that went through the chickens. In the chicken litter, it was fed and it caused congestive heart failure and is now off the market. Okay. Ammonia and urea are not a huge problem. Again, in excess, if animals are not adapted and too much, then you get ammonia or urea poisoning. It's not fed at high levels in dairy rations, especially in a total mixed ration. In the feedlots, I know we use maximum 1% as a non-protein nitrogen source. But again, people make mistakes when mixing, and then you can get urea poisoning, severe nervous signs, and these animals die. Was never, not never, but I'm not good at saving animals with urea poisoning. In my experience, they die. Okay. The only take-home message, the only thing I want you to remember about urea poisoning, if you see animals salivating, bloating, running around, showing nervous signs, that can be urea poisoning amongst others. You must know your chemistry and your biochemistry. Remember this equation here at the bottom. Here's the cursor. Urea reacts with water and gets broken down in the rumen by urease enzyme to ammonia, NH3 and CO2. And the poisoning is caused by ammonia. And this whole chemical reaction is accelerated by higher temperature. You can see there it's optimum at 49 degrees. We know the rumen is 38.5 or 1 degree warmer than body temperature, so it's 39.5. And the pH, at a high pH, this whole chemical reaction is optimized. Okay, the reason why you must know this is because how to treat these animals. So what would you like to do? You would like to slow down this reaction. So you bring down the temperature. How do you do that? You dose an animal with 20, 30 liters of cold water. So to bring that rumen temperature down from 39.5 to maybe 25 or 28 degrees. And that will stop that reaction. The other thing you want to decrease the pH. How do you do that? You put vinegar in your water to bring the pH down from 7.7 or 8 there to maybe 6 or 6.5. Therefore, you need to know this reaction and why we do that. And that's all you need to know about urea. You need to know this reaction. And that you need to know it, and that's how you and why you treat animals. Okay. 20 to 40 liters of cold water in a rumen. That's most probably the best treatment. And chuck 2 or 3 bottles of vinegar in there to bring the pH down. Okay, we've got 10 minutes left, I guess, 15 minutes. Water. I'm not going to emphasize any specific syndrome in water. The only thing I can say, South Africa is a drought-stricken country. We have got problems with water. In any farming enterprise, whether you've got a feedlot or a dairy, whether you drink the water yourself or whatever, the water in any farming practice on a farmer from all different water sources needs to be analyzed once a year. Once every year you need to analyze it, and the farmer needs to keep that. And often we can see how the quality of our water has deteriorated over years. I can tell you, with all these informal settlements around our farms, we find E. coli now in water on the Highveld. And with diarrheas, not only caused by Cryptosporidium, which is a huge problem, but also by E. coli. One farmer solved it by putting a chlorinator on his water, supplied to his animals, to his calves. So water quality, you can send it to the CSIR. I think they've got the best lab. Like the fungal analysis, there are many labs. They're the only lab that does microbiology as well. They'll give you a count, a microbial count, because there are always microbes like fungi, also always microbes in the water, but they can do your actual count. And they will do your full micro and macro mineral analysis. And there are experts there that can interpret that for you, but you need the result and do that on an annual basis. Tell your farmer, when last did you have your water analyzed, and send to a good lab. There are specific syndromes like nitrates and nitrates. You'll pick that immediately up in your water analysis. Then fluoride, extremely important. There are areas in South Africa that are high in fluoride, and the cutoff point there is usually 6 ppm, 6 parts per million. If it's higher than 6 parts per million in your water, like we get in the on the Springbok Flats here north of Wombats, and there are dairies there. There are dairies in Petersburg or Mokgopong or whatever it's called now. And those boreholes are very high in fluoride. There are farmers there that can only farm on a short-term basis. What I mean by that, they feed their animals or can keep animals for a year, and then they slaughter them, and then they bring in new animals, they fatten them and slaughter them after a year. If you keep animals there for 2 or 3 years, they develop exostosis and teeth problems because of the high levels of fluoride. So take home message, get your water analyzed every year for microbes and for macro and micro minerals. Okay, medications. Farmers and their managers, they give medications to animals on a daily basis. See if you manage, or if you, the consulting vet, go and have a look how they do that at some stage. I went to visit a feedlot the other day. They were injecting 2 vaccines. In those 2 vaccines, there were 15 antigens. On the same day, on the same moment, they were injecting a ivermectin. They were giving a multi-mineral injection like multimin, and they were giving a dewormer. The 15 antigens were plus the ivermectin, plus the multi-mineral injection of multimin was given at the same spot of about a radius of 5 centimeters. So just by looking at how they process these animals, I just told him, I think one guy must stand on the other side of the animal, that you don't inject the minerals with a vaccine. So you think this is common sense. It is common sense. But go and observe how they treat the animals and what they do. Don't think they know what they're doing. They often don't. And this is a very well-known big feedlot. And just by standing there, I see how they're happy. You know, the 15 antigens went in there, the mineral went in there, the ivermectin in there. So we A for away, and the implant, by the way. Go and look what people do. Here's a picture of a guy who tried to make his own poron. That was just when Deadline came onto the market. It was very expensive, flumethrin. So this farmer decided to make his own Deadline by taking an organophosphate, mixing it with cooking oil, put it on his animals. The organophosphate was immediately absorbed, and the animals, when he put on the poron on the last animal, the first one was dead in the milking parlor. Bones in the light. That's what you see there. They're dead. Copper poisoning. We're running out of time. It's a sheep syndrome, with one exception. And that's why you'll see toxicology. There's 2 things: dose and species differences. 2 species of dairy animals are susceptible to copper because Jerseys and Guernseys come from an island, same as Ile-de-France, sheep that come from a specific island, which these islands are deficient in copper. And what happens is these animals are genetically engineered to accumulate copper whenever they get hold of it, because they were raised and born and genetically engineered on those islands where there are no copper. So they developed in these copper deficient areas to accumulate copper whenever they can get it. Give them just excess copper in a ration and they die of chronic copper poisoning. We had a huge outbreak, not a huge outbreak, over a period, a chronic outbreak near Scotborough. And now getting back to the history story. These animals died on a regular basis. One of the best Jersey herds in South Africa, stud animals. And they couldn't solve the problem. And I was at that stage at the OVI, and eventually the farmer phoned me. They were absolutely at a loss why these animals die. And I told him, go and sit down and write everything for me, how you see it. And he wrote about 10 pages for me, not typed with handwriting. And I read through that. And he mentioned one sentence. He said, I saw red urine in one of these animals. And obviously red water was dealt with in all these cases. It wasn't red water. But that one sentence of red urine gave me an idea. There was a humidity crisis. There were ruptures of the red blood cells. And luckily they still had liver at the pathologist because they looked at the pathology. And I said, test that for liver, for copper, please, immediately. And within a day, we had a diagnosis of chronic copper poisoning in Jerseys. And this farmer was compensated by the feed company within a month. It was millions. So only those two species. We fed copper sulfate to cattle after a disaster for a year. Didn't cause any problem. Only those two species, Jerseys and Guernsey. Remember, copper accumulates in the liver over time. You get a crisis when it exceeds the threshold. It goes into the bloodstream, causes hemolysis, which is important, and therefore you get the red urine in those animals. Jerseys, Guernseys, susceptible. The biggest antagonist is molybdenum. Must always be 10 to 1 the ratio of molybdenum to copper. Treat these animals with ammonium molybdate to decrease the levels of copper in the liver. And yeah, you get, sorry, I'm going to skip this, you get a hemolytic crisis. Builds up over time. If you analyze this liver after the time, it's about 500 ppms of copper in these animals. Remember, only those two breeds. And this is what you get. Although this is a sheep now, we get the same in those Jerseys. A yellow carcass. And gunmetal black kidneys, because the hemolysis causes hemoglobin to go through those kidneys. And what is the metal in hemoglobin that carries oxygen? It's iron. So what you look at there on your screen is iron. That's why it's black. Gunmetal black kidneys. That's caused by iron. Red urine. You don't, yeah. So red urine, red water, or copper. That's your two major DDs. Severe liver damage, the high levels of, if you analyze it. The mother of all toxins. We are finishing now. Botulism. Botulism is a toxin. That's why I've included in this presentation. It's not a bacterial disease, although produced by bacterium Clostridium botulinum. It is so toxic, we can't work out a LD50 for botulism. It's impossible. So we work with another toxicological term, which is called the MDT, median toxic dose. I won't explain that to you how it works, but I mean, it's 0.388 nanograms per kilogram. Now, to explain to you what a nanogram is, if you take a kilogram, you divide it by 1,000, you get a gram, another 1,000 a milligram, another 1,000 a microgram, and another 1,000 is a nanogram. So 0.388 nanograms per kilogram body weight of botulism toxin can kill an animal. Now, let me tell you, this is urea. I weighed that little, they're not the same, but on average, they weigh about 4 milligrams. If you divide that nanograms in 4 milligrams, you get 25,000. Botulism toxin, the size of a urea granule, can kill 25,000 animals. It's the mother of all toxins. I was involved in many, many cases. In one, just to name one, a dairy at Mooi River, they fed chicken litter, and it's not the chicken litter that kills it. There's a dead chicken in the chicken litter, which they didn't remove, and it was gone through the hammer mill. That stuff was so toxic, it killed 240 animals in 3 days. I got some of the chicken litter, I fed it to an animal at OP. We wanted to take a video for you students. and we had all our cameras set up. We gave it a teaspoonful of chicken litter, adult animal, adult cow, with all our cameras, and you know what people at universities and like research institutes do. We watched these animals up to 10 o'clock, then it was tea time. So we went for tea time. And when we got back, the animal was dead. So we missed the whole bloody video just because of tea time. So this is, you can get acute toxicity with botulism. And therefore we've missed the initial cases. Once they go down and you can pull out the tongues, then anybody can diagnose it. But remember, the toxin is in the dose. The animals that take in a lot of it, they die first, and they die fairly acutely without showing signs of botulism. The ones that die 3, 4, 5 days later, which has taken in, let's say, a fairly normal dose, then it's easy to diagnose. Botulism, standard vaccination, compulsory vaccination, annual vaccination. Okay. I'm ending off. I mentioned this a number of times. The father of toxicology is Paracelsus. He lived in the 16th century, and he coined this phrase, sola dosis facit venenum. That's Latin. Sola means only. Dosis is the same, dose. Facit, facilitate, determines. Venenum, venom, the poison. Only the dose determines the poison. Therefore, if we work and make a diagnosis, we would like, if we can, determine the levels of the poison. If we go to court, we know what we're talking about. And this holds true for most of toxicology. You know, if you eat 2 or 3 tulps leaves, the animals won't die. If it takes in half a kilogram, it will die. Only the dose determines the poison. So if you look at the bottom of my letterhead, this is my slogan as a toxicologist, and that's what I use. I thank Professor Christo Botha from the faculty. He supplied lots of these slides to me, and many of them on my own. Jelena, I think we've got maybe, I don't know, is there a break now again or whatever? It's exactly 10 o'clock, so I used up my 2 hours, but if there are questions, you must tell me. I hope your ears are now not ringing because of all the information. But it was nice spending time with you guys, although it's very impersonal.
Dr. Neil, thank you so much for your presentation. I got a message from Dr. Fafa Malan, who's not able to, who couldn't link in this morning, but he asked me to ask you just to share a couple of words on Asiatische rooi water, which I suppose is Asiatic red water, to the students.
Trust Dr. Fafa Malan to ask that question. We're working with toxicology here, but okay, can I share a few things? Asiatic red water kills animals. As simple as that. I've did a PM on one last week. It was 17 days in Middelburg, 85,000 rands for the bull. It's dead. So Asiatic red water, you need to vaccinate your animals. The guys in the Eastern Cape with severe problems, I presented the whole talk there to the dairy vets. And they do all sorts of funny things. If you don't vaccinate, you will lose animals. You need to vaccinate. The vaccine is registered to use between 2 and 6 months of age. You need to vaccinate all your calves. Vaccinate, vaccinate, vaccinate with Asiatic red water. And that's not the complete solution, but just remember this. We sell about 250,000 doses of red water vaccine in South Africa. We've got 13 million animals. So vaccinate those animals. And well, I can keep you busy next time for 4 hours on the Asiatic red water. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Please, Dr. Chris.
No, sorry, I'm not on the camera, so I'm tired of being on the camera now. But just a question to Neil is fipronil. You know, agricultural fipronil that they use in agriculture itself. I think there's some farmers that's actually making or using that and you know, making their own dips. You know, you did see that photo there of the guy that tried to make his own deadline. But Neil, maybe the comment on using agricultural fipronil. You know, it's a good product when you use it for
Yeah.
for maize and so on, but I think it's dangerous, especially when it comes to resistance and creating resistance.
Yeah, that's a very good question. We're talking about now homemade remedies of whatever chemical you're talking about. To me, resistance is not the biggest problem. The biggest issue here is residues. Because if we take, and I've been involved at Intervet and MSD by bringing new formulations onto the market. I've been through the whole process of how you get something onto the market and how you determine that 30 or 60 or 80 or 120, and now with Immunocarb 4A65, 210 days withdrawal period. How you determine that? That's for food safety. So although fipronil is now registered for dairy, for animals, I don't know dairy, I'm not sure. It's not dairy, but for other animals, for beef animals, and dogs and cats. Luckily, we're not Chinese, we don't eat dogs and cats. We're not that desperate at this stage. But if you use it on a food producing animal, your own concoction, nobody knows what the withdrawal period is of what you've used, and we eat that meat. And we are increasingly exporting meat to other parts of the world. You know, 5 years ago, we were a net importer of meat into South Africa. We're at a stage now, and this is going to increase, where we are going to export more and more, especially of our expensive cuts, like our fillets and our steaks. It's going to go to Europe, let me tell you that. And if they pick up all the stuff that we use illegally here, they will just stop the imports from South Africa. So for a reason, there's a withdrawal period on every product that we use in food producing animals. It's hell of expensive to determine that period, and it's done scientifically. So my biggest issue is not resistance, but is a lack of knowledge of what this guy, he's made his own formulation with his own cooking oil or whatever. How long will that molecule now stay in the body? And let me tell you, if this meat goes to Europe, they will test for that. Is there more questions?
There's no questions. We can just wait another minute or two. We're already 4 minutes into tea time, but that doesn't really matter because we don't see one another. So Dr. Neil, if you can just hang on for another minute and see whether we have another question.
Elena, maybe I'll ask him a question. You know, we learned about, in the old days, they called it a Volvagif 1080. I don't know, Neil, is 1080 still around? And then do you, it's a highly toxic product. Yeah. I think it's monofluoroacetate.
Yeah, 1080 is the toxic principle of gifblaar, monofluoroacetate. It's registered for use in New Zealand to kill possums. It's a marsupial. It's banned in South Africa. It's only, I think, registered still in the poison collar that you put around the sheep's neck in the Karoo, and when the jackal bites onto these pouches, they get them 1080 in their mouths and they die because of that. But it's not registered. It's not on the market. It's severely toxic, and it's the most important thing. You can't really detect that chemically afterwards. So it's ideal poison to wipe out somebody. By the way, maybe as the last comment, I'm a toxicologist. If you want to get rid of somebody, please, you can come and see me. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Neil. We've got no further questions.
Yeah, I hope you don't all rush off and drink a bottle of dip because of all the stuff I've run through now. But I hope I've sort of created an interest in toxicology and all its facets. And it's, to me, always nice to talk to you, and have a nice day and the rest of your presentations.
Just a comment, we've got a comment from Gina Wright saying, thank you, Doctor, it was very, very interesting.
Great pleasure.
Okay, Dr. Neil, thank you so much for all your effort, and especially driving down to Pretoria to present this lecture. We really appreciate.
Okay, good day. Keep well, everybody.
Bye-bye.